Hey folks, Monica here. Today I'm going to show you how to shut down a screen so cleanly it doesn't even blink. Like if I squinted just right, maybe the message would rearrange itself into something less absurd. But nope, still there. Let's talk about Brett. Brett is the kind of guy who thinks thought leadership means quoting Elon Musk over lunch. His LinkedIn headline, Transforming the Rust Belt with Silicon Valley Energy. That's not even satire. He once asked our IT guy if unplugging the router would reboot the cloud. He thought a 401k was a racing event. And now, somehow, Brett is the new director of integrated systems, a title I invented as a joke in a presentation 5 years ago. The email came at 5:47 p.m. on a Friday, just as the office did its usual fake casual shuffle, everyone pretending they weren't counting the minutes to the weekend, like inmates waiting on release. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Didn't even call my cousin Janice, who usually gets the rage text trilogy when things go south. I just closed. My Outlook leaned back in my chair and exhaled through my nose, the kind of slow exhale you do when the insult is so deep your great-grandmother in Kansas probably felt it. 18 years. I onboarded every manager who ever stepped foot in our Indiana headquarters. I rebuilt our broken reporting frameworks while they were off on strategy visioning retreats. I carried the company through 3 system conversions, 2 CEOs and 1 VP who thought pivot tables were yoga poses. And for what? To be replaced by a guy who calls Excel the grid of feels. Oh, and by the way, if you're still here nodding along and you're part of the 97% who keep watching without subscribing, now's the time. Seriously. Click that button, drop a like. It tells our little caffeine-powered crew that somebody's rooting for the smart ones who got overlooked. Anyway, I watched the office clear out. Nobody noticed I stayed. Nobody said goodbye. Not even a quiet hang in there. Just that HR woman who sounds like she teaches hot yoga apologizing, like I stubbed my toe, not my career. So I did what any woman who's been blindsided by nepotism does, packed up my mug planner and red swingline stapler because I'm petty. And he'll need it Monday, and placed my badge face down in the center of my desk like a tiny silent tombstone. I forwarded the email to my personal address and flagged it. Not for revenge, not yet. Just for safekeeping. And I closed that laptop like someone cocking a shotgun. Not like someone ending a chapter, more like someone chambering a round. My body was still in that office chair, but my mind was already across the city, sipping black coffee in a brick-walled cafe with the one person I swore I'd never call. The one whose business card I kept tucked behind my license. Claire Donnelly, SVP of Innovation Strategy at Solara Cortec, our fiercest competitor. And in that moment, it wasn't grief. It wasn't rage. It was clarity. Brett rolled into work Monday like a malfunctioning retail kiosk, loud, glitchy, and promising things no one asked for. He strutted through the open-floor bullpen wearing limited edition sneakers and a sweatshirt that screamed, "Grind, don't sleep," in neon pink. No laptop, no pen, just a smug smirk and a vape that smelled like mango-flavored delusion. "Let's disrupt some deliverables, team," he shouted, clapping like a motivational speaker in a high school gym. 3 people visibly winced. 1 woman blinked like she'd just been slapped by noise. I stayed hidden behind my monitor, watching him like a wildlife photographer watching a possum try to operate a vending machine. This man, this grown child, had just inherited the infrastructure I'd spent nearly 2 decades refining. He sat in my chair and asked if we had an intern who could, quote, turn these spreadsheets into like TikToks or mood boards or whatever. By 10:03 a.m., he had already crashed the shared drive rebranding folder structures. I asked what he'd done. "Too many words," he shrugged. "I like icons color. Vibe it out." He renamed our legal compliance folder to Brain Blaze Vault. And me, I was assigned to train him. Help him transition, the CEO said. "Be a team player, Monica." "Sure. Here's your parachute, Brett. I'll just light it on the way down." "Do you know how to open a zip file?" I asked, sugar sweet. He blinked. "I think my iPad does it on its own." "But why are the files hiding? I could explain macros." I replied, smiling like a church elder, "Hiding a dagger, but you might short circuit." He chuckled like he thought I was flirting. Meanwhile, our junior analyst, a sharp kid named Diego, whispered across the desk, "Why are you leaving and not him?" "Great question, kid. Ask the patriarchy." By Wednesday, Brett hosted a team meeting to share his vision. Eliminate KPIs they cause stress and replace our roadmap with a vibe board. Yes, a vibe board. It featured a cat doing yoga and a quote, "Strategy is just vibes wearing a tie." My jaw ached from how hard I was grinding my teeth. My molars ached from the grind, literal, not motivational. I started documenting everything, every baffling choice Brett made, every file he touched, every sentence that sounded like a motivational poster got rewritten by a sleep-deprived raccoon with a crayon, not for revenge, not yet, just cataloging the inevitable collapse, a living obituary. He asked if we could add fun animations to the performance dashboards because, and I quote, "the numbers are too numeric." He called my meticulously calibrated capacity model kinda depressing. "It feels restrictive," he said. "Yes, Brett," I replied flatly. "That's called structure. But logic doesn't matter when your father-in-law pays the bills." So I smiled, nodded, and showed him again how to sort columns without deleting formulas. I watched him fumble through tasks I could do while running a fever with one AirPod in. And I waited, because if Brett was the storm they chose, I knew exactly which weak beam he'd snap first. I left the same way I survived 18 years there, quiet, precise, invisible, until it was too late. No speech, no slam doors, no middle finger farewell. Just one last lap around the office floor that still smelled like overcooked popcorn and desperation. Brett was huddled in a corner tapping his Apple Watch, muttering something about syncing Slack to get productivity on his wrist. Across the bullpen, the team gathered like hostages around a dry erase board full of emojis and cat gifs labeled Mood Sprint Vision 3.0. I slipped off my badge with the same quiet grace you earn after a decade of being talked over in meetings and thanked with grocery store cupcakes for saving million-dollar projects. I laid it on my desk on top of the transition binder I wasn't asked to make, but did anyway. Because I may be a lot of things, but sloppy isn't one of them. On the front, I stuck a neon pink Post-it. It read, "Sharpie, good luck. You'll need it." Then I grabbed my coat, unplugged the tiny space heater no one knew I had under the desk, and walked out. No one looked up. The only sound, Brett's all-staff email going out with the subject line, "Fire Strategy, Friday Vibes." Outside, the wind smacked me clean, a slap and a blessing. I sat in my car, hands on the wheel, staring ahead like I expected someone to yell, "Cut." Roll credits. Fade to black. I hadn't realized they cast me as the villain. Until now. And then I pulled out my phone and tapped the draft I'd been rehearsing in my head for months. To Claire Donnelly, SVP Solara Cortec. Subject lunch. Let's talk. M. 3 words. Lunch. Follow-up. Sent. The truth is Claire had reached out 6 months ago, back when I still clung to the idea that loyalty was a virtue, not a liability. We met for sushi at a place with linen napkins and an actual wine list, not the kind that gives you soy sauce in packets. She never offered a job outright. She didn't have to. She said things like, "We move faster than they do. You deserve to be heard." And my personal favorite, "We don't treat architects like scaffolding." I smiled, nodded, thanked her for the meal, and walked away, telling myself my time would come. That eventually, someone at my company would realize I'd been holding up their house of cards for nearly 2 decades. But now, that house had crumbled. That spine had snapped. And what I felt wasn't grief. It was weightlessness. I drove home with the radio off, needing the kind of silence that felt sacred, not awkward. Like the hush before a tornado lands. I lit a candle, cracked open a cold beer, and stared at my bookshelf until I saw it. A thick black binder labeled Transition Plans, Contingency. If Monica's journey stirred something in you, whether it was the calm defiance, the quiet planning, or the power of being underestimated, don't miss what comes next. Tap subscribe and stay with us as the story unfolds even further. The next chapter goes deeper, and trust me, you'll want a front row seat when Monica faces what no boardroom could ever prepare for. Subscribing isn't just supporting a story. It's standing beside every professional who's ever been told to stay in their lane. So stick around. The fire's still burning, and the next move, it's going to leave a mark. I'd written it after the second ownership change just in case. Because deep down, I'd always known the glass ceiling above me wasn't really glass. It was a one-way mirror, and I was just the show for whoever was watching above. I flipped to the tab marked High-Value External Contacts. There she was, Claire Donnelly, Solara Cortec, SVP of Innovation Strategy, and in my own handwriting below, only call when you're done pretending. I picked up my phone again. This time, subject game on. Body, let's win. When I walked into Solara's downtown Indianapolis office, the first thing Claire said was, "You waited longer than I thought." I just smiled. I'm here now. No orientation purgatory, no scavenger hunt for toner codes, no welcome videos narrated by cartoon mascots. Within an hour, I had a key card, a laptop, and an assistant who already knew my coffee order black no room. Nobody asked me to prove my worth. They could read it in the wreckage I left behind. My title, Executive Vice President of Strategic Systems. No asterisk, no temporary title, no Brett. Just real authority, real budget. And praise be a chair that didn't squeak when I leaned back. Solara moved like a shark through minnows. Meetings were short, plans were sharp, decisions stuck. And my team. They weren't here to learn the ropes. They were here to pull them tight. I devoured every deck roadmap and internal memo Solara had. Mapped the competitive terrain like I was planning a federal sting. And page by page, my former company's blind spots came into full view. Redundant contracts. Legacy tech debt, features promised without feasibility. And most satisfying of all, vendor overlap. They'd gotten sloppy stuffed with acquisition bloat and buzzword benders. Back when I was still patching the pipes, they didn't listen. Now I was drawing blueprints for the flood. By the end of week 1, I'd built a 38-slide strategic deck outlining a 6-month blitz called Project Echo. Named for what it was, a cleaner, sharper reflection of their own bloated promises. Only ours worked. We'd pitch it faster, leaner, and packed with the features I knew real clients actually asked for. And we're told that's phase 3. Claire walked into the room mid-slide. Half a protein bar, still in hand, just in time to catch slide. 14. Competitive erosion via strategic feature cloning and preemptive client support. She mouthed, "Holy hell." Her response green-lighted. Full budget. Whoever you need. No subcommittees. No finance guy asking me to shave 2 slides and 3 engineers. Just power. Direct. Surgical. Real. By Thursday, I was walking past glass-walled huddle rooms and hearing my name whispered like legend. Is that Monica Lane? Yeah, she's the one who built Project Echo. She trained Brett Chambers. Poor woman. That afternoon, my lead analyst, Elijah Brilliant and unblinking, like he was born in Excel, slid a folder onto my desk. No label, just a yellow Post-it. You'll want to see this. Inside a cross-referenced vendor matrix of Solara and my former firm. Logistics, AI integrations, payments, even HR onboarding APIs. Every shared contractor, every SLA, every vulnerability. 4 vendors overlapped. 2 were already talking to us. 1 had submitted a bid that undercut my old firm by 11%. Top sheet label, confidential. Vendor crossover. I stared at it for a long second, then laughed quiet and sharp. Because I didn't just know their pressure points. I built them. It started as a whisper. But by Tuesday morning, the crater had formed. One of their crown jewel clients, Glenwell Logistics, quietly cut ties. No email blast, no LinkedIn announcement, just a brief press release about strategic redirection, and a curt note to the old firm's account lead, your competitors offer real-time fleet integration. You don't. And that's when the dominoes began to tilt. Just a generic press release about strategic realignment and a curt email to their account team. Your competitors offer real-time fleet integration. You don't. Within the hour, that message was forwarded 17 times. By lunchtime, the phrase feature parity echoed through their office like a smoke alarm no one could shut off. I'd bet Brett had to Google what it meant probably twice. Then came the leak. An internal capabilities comparison memo, very much not for public consumption, landed in the inboxes of 3 trade journalists. Subject line, side-by-side Solera versus legacy systems. Inc., my old firm. And it was brutal. Not just because Solera outperformed them in all 6 key performance categories, but because the formatting was unmistakably mine. The structure, the phrasing, the line modular scalability with 0 downtime deploys. I wrote that years ago. Watched it get buried under Brett's tech with zest. Rebrand complete with mango-colored fonts. Now, my words were a mirror. And Solara. We were the sharper reflection. Back at my old company, I heard the president slammed a table so hard he knocked over someone's commemorative golf trophy. Who leaked this? He barked. Legal kicked off a full audit. HR froze outgoing emails. IT monitored logins like they were screening for insider trading. I could picture it all, Brett sweating through that too-tight hoodie, fumbling to find someone to blame. I took a slow sip of coffee, like it was aged bourbon. And then, in a stunning act of miscalculation, Brett decided to handle damage control himself. He booked a live webinar with a mid-tier industry outlet to explain their innovation roadmap. The man couldn't explain his sandwich order correctly, but sure go live. Of course, I watched. Within 2 minutes, he quoted a KPI framework we deprecated 4 years ago. It used to be the cornerstone of our analytics stack. Until I rebuilt it. I paused, rewound, laughed once, and forwarded the clip to Solara's social team with 1 sentence. When your competitor still thinks it's 2019. The next morning, Solara's account posted a meme, left a dusty calculator labeled Legacy KPIs. Right, our sleek dashboard glowing with animated graphs. Caption: some companies study the past. We build the future. 18,000 likes in 48 hours. Inside Solera, no explanation was needed. Clients were calling, prospects were referencing Glenwell before we even brought it up. The shift was happening and the tide was rising fast. We're going for it, Claire said, and I want you leading the bid. No backup, no breaks. Go for the throat, she added, sliding the Colfax file across the table. This wasn't personal anymore. This was professional annihilation. Colfax was a 9-figure federal infrastructure contract. Multi-year. Public sector visibility, audit trails, performance milestones so tight they choked weaker vendors in red tape. The kind of deal that built legacies or ended careers. And they were putting Brett in charge of the bid on the other side. When Claire told me, I laughed so hard I choked on my coffee. Brett, the man, who once asked if HTML could catch a virus. He couldn't lead a team of Girl Scouts across a parking lot, let alone into a procurement gauntlet with compliance audits, infrastructure, evaluations, and legal scrutiny. But I wasn't counting on his incompetence. I was going to bury him with precision, outbid, outthink, outclass. And when the dust settled, I wanted them to know exactly who flipped the match. Claire tapped the folder once. Rip them apart, she said. I'll cover your flank. For the first time in a long while, I felt something deeper than revenge. I felt focus. This wasn't just a deal. This was a conquest. $122 million. 10-year federal roadmap. Full-stack overhaul. Coverage from Forbes to Modern Tech Architect. 2 firms made the shortlist, us and them. It wasn't a proposal. It was war. And I was holding the scalpel. I dissected every line of the RFP like it owed me money. My war room looked like a conspiracy theorist's bunker. Timelines, vendor maps, client org charts, sticky notes in 5 colors. I'd labeled their weak spots, latency risks, crosswalk redundancies, over-promised throughput. I didn't just predict their bid, I pre-lived it. Brett's team would pitch flash-over function. UX design front and center. They'd focus on emotion, visuals, empathy, because that's all they understood. How do I know? I trained those people, built their habits, documented their instincts. So I laid the perfect trap. And while Brett waxed poetic about dashboard vibes, we led with what mattered: performance metrics. Real data. Verified simulations. The message was clear. They imagined the future. We built it. Clean, brutal numbers. Our engineers ran a full simulated rollout under stress test conditions. Then, we layered in predictive AI scaling with federal compliance, baked in no retrofits, no patch jobs. They'd pitch style. We pitched permanence. But I wasn't done. Buried deep in their proposal, camouflaged beneath branding fluff and vague vendor bullet points was a liability. A small line item tied to infrastructure subcontracting. The vendor quietly flagged in a recent federal deployment for SLA violations. Not public enough to trend, but not invisible to anyone who knew where to look. I slipped the reference into our appendix slide 47 under third-party risk exposure. Didn't name the vendor. Didn't need to. Anyone on the procurement board with a pulse would connect the dots and sweat. That's how you win. Not with slogans, but with timing, silence, and strategic exposure. Inside Solera, our prep was surgical. Claire gave me full control of the war room. Every day, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., we lived inside that bid. No distractions, no side chatter, just strategy. We debated every word, deploy versus provision baseline versus benchmark. Nothing was casual. Then 2 days before final walkthrough, the procurement calendar dropped. Shared prep call. Required attendees. And there it was, Carol Pierce, Director of Systems Architecture, my former department head. The one who once told me, "You're not quite executive material, but we value you." The one who signed off on Brett's promotion while looking over my shoulder like I wasn't even there. I stared at her name on the Zoom invite. One breath, then another. 15 years of being overlooked, condensed into one moment. I hovered over the list and clicked remove. She wouldn't be attending, not in my meeting, not in my room, not anymore. 2 days later, Solera dropped the announcement on LinkedIn like a thunderclap. 10-year partnership. National infrastructure. Let's build the future. No hashtags, no fireworks, just a clean, quiet statement of power. Inside the war room, no one clapped. No one shouted. Claire just looked at me across the table and said, "It's done." I nodded once, because it was never about proving anything to them. It was about building something they could never touch again. I nodded once. "It's only starting," I said. Within 48 hours, the market responded like it had been holding its breath. My former employer, still drunk on its own buzzwords, plunged 11% by Thursday's closing bell. Analysts called it a confidence dip in federal vertical positioning. Translation: they just lost credibility with the U.S. government and every institutional investor watching. Then the layoffs began. First came the strategic realignment, then reassessment of overlapping roles. I knew the language because I'd helped write those emails. Back when we thought we were sparing dignity. Only this time, they were copy-pasting the same script about themselves. A former colleague DM'd me. They're offering Starbucks gift cards to people who take the severance quietly. I didn't respond, just tapped the heart emoji. Apparently, Brett cried during a team meeting. Poor thing. I'm sure he misspelled compliance through the tears. But the real blow, the one that knocked wind out of the executive suite, a leaked org chart, not just internal. It ended up in Tech Insider's Friday night scoop. Headline: Merger Shuffle, Surprise EVP Appointment, Raises Eyebrows After Quiet Acquisition. Turns out the parent company One Solara had quietly partnered with had acquired 51% controlling interest last quarter. We hadn't just beat them, we bought them. And there it was. Third box down right side of the new structure. Bold font, no typo. Monica Lane, Executive Vice President Systems Strategy. The same Monica they once deemed not quite executive material. According to someone's intern who leaked it to someone else who leaked it to me, Mark, their president, was reviewing internal memos when he saw my name. He went pale, whispered, "Wait, is this?" Then dropped his phone onto a glass table. Literally, clatter and everything. The document, a stakeholder briefing. Item number 3, coordinate with EVP Lane on roadmap continuity and integration compliance. He hadn't just lost a contract. He hadn't just lost the firm. He now reported indirectly, but unavoidably, to the same woman they replaced with a charisma void in designer sneakers who thought agile was a yoga pose. The board scrambled. Legal tried to slow the transition. PR issued some limp apology about strategic synergy with new partners, but it was too late. I wasn't returning for a victory lap. I came back to audit the remains. And that boardroom glass walls. Sterile air. A silence so sharp it felt surgical. Exactly the kind of room where careers get autopsied with quiet voices and stainless steel pens. President Mark stood at the head of the boardroom table. Soot-wrinkled eyes, bloodshot knuckles locked around a styrofoam cup, leaking cold coffee onto the agenda printout he hadn't read. He pressed his assistant's number, voice low and cracking. Who the hell did we just fire? No one answered. She was out sick, probably smart enough to read the weather forecast. He looked up. That's when I walked in. The click of my heels across the marble floor hit like a metronome, marking the death of denial. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. Just walked in holding a folder of coffee and 18 years of quiet fury. He blinked. Monica! I placed the coffee on the table, no coaster. Oh, I believe you remember me. I trained your current VP to breathe. He still wheezes through the basics. Silence fell across the room, dense and clinical. A few board members shifted. One stared at the folder like it might detonate. I'm here, I said, calm and surgical on behalf of the majority stakeholder. This is the roadmap realignment. Your departmental inputs are due by Monday. Mark opened his mouth. I raised a finger. No, you don't speak yet. You listen. Because the woman you once called administrative wallpaper just acquired the walls, the ceiling, and the damn deed. He slid the folder toward him, hands trembling. Inside revised budgets, org charts, and a concise note from Claire, all decisions final. Do not delay. One of the board members finally cleared his throat. So, you're not here to rejoin. I met his eyes. I'm here to clean house. Rejoining implies there's something left worth staying for. Mark scrambled for his tablet. This is madness. You're not qualified to restructure. I stepped forward. Just enough to make him flinch. I know every system in this company. Every workaround. Every legacy patch and shadow loop you signed off on without reading. I built the skeleton you dressed in PowerPoints. He shrank. The room exhaled nervously. I turned slowly, letting it all sink in. You didn't just fire an employee, I said. You discarded your disaster recovery plan. Your memory. Your only adult in the room. Silence stretched. And I let it. Then I picked up my coffee, took a long, steady sip, and exhaled. Let's talk about your options, if any still remain. If you've made it this far, thank you for witnessing not just the wreckage, but the rebuilding. This wasn't just a revenge story. It was about remembering who I am when the noise dies down. About reclaiming the voice I was told to soften. The truth is, I never wanted war. But when they handed me the match, I made sure the fire had purpose. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been overlooked? Replaced? Told your value was too hard to measure on a spreadsheet? Drop a comment below. Let me know what part of my story hit hardest. Whether it was the silence in the boardroom, or the moment I removed a name from that meeting invite without a single blink. I read every message. And I want this space to become a gathering place for quiet fighters like me, people who carry competence like armor and walk into storms with nothing but clarity. If you're sitting in a job where your talent is being dismissed, where your loyalty is being repackaged as weakness, I hope my story reminds you of this. Your worth is not determined by who sees it. It's determined by what you've built, especially when no one was watching. And if you're still in that office, still being told to shrink yourself so someone else can shine, hear this: stay sharp, stay ready. Your moment might not come with fireworks, but when it does, make sure you own every inch of it. If this story spoke to you, tap subscribe, hit the like button, and share it with someone who needs a reminder of their power. Because quiet competence isn't just underestimated, it's unstoppable. And we're just getting started.